I volunteered almost immediately, thinking I would help those who had lived through Katrina. That was not the case. There were a few of us who were assigned once the water started to recede to find houses that had dead bodies in them. If you've ever had to do a body recovery after it's been lying around in the heat and water for days, sometimes weeks at a time, you know how it smells. Sort of smells like any other dead carcass, but worse. I can't explain it. Maybe somehow sweeter smelling. Anyway, the key to not vomiting when you smell them is Vicks in and under around the bottom of your nose. It doesn't keep all the smell out, but enough to where you can at least tolerate the smell without vomiting. We had to go to each house and go inside in wading boots and look for bodies. Many of them washed out to sea, but some of them were still in the houses that they had lived in prior to the hurricane. If we found a body, we spray painted a big X on the outside of the house. This other guy and I had been doing it for a while, and we got assigned each other almost every day. We got along okay, and he didn't vomit at the ones that had been gotten to. We came up to this one old shack. I say shack because it was pretty run down in what had been a really bad neighborhood. Right away I got chills down my spine. I knew there was something really wrong. Not like find a body kind of wrong, but a chilling kind of wrong. New Orleans has certain areas that just give off these vibes. My understanding is that there's a lot of voodoo practiced in certain areas. Anyway, against everything my body was screaming at me when we went in the house, the first thing I could smell was a body. The second was something almost earthy and mold. I looked at my partner. I'll call him Jay. He was white as a sheet. I could tell he was getting the same feeling I had been getting. It was obvious from the weird bones hanging from the ceiling. I'd bet money that they were probably cats. Something odd had been going on in this house, as well as strange beads and carvings all over the bare wood and the walls. We went into what was the kitchen, and there, chained to a beam, was an old lady, or what was left of her. She had chained herself by her wrist to the beam. Her guts were falling out on the floor. The creepiest thing was her face still looked as though she were alive, and staring at us with a wicked smile, showing only partial teeth. My skin started to crawl as goosebumps spread over my body and my neck hair stood up. Suddenly, I heard the most unearthly cackling noise I've ever heard in my life, and my fight or flight response kicked in. Jay and I noped out of there. We quickly painted the X and literally ran to the next house. Now, I don't know if the old lady had practiced voodoo or whatever, but that scared the ever-living hell out of me. It still gives me nightmares. The people I feel sorry for are the ones who had to take that crazy lady out of there. Jay and I discussed it that night after we went back to the hotels north of there. He had heard the cackling too, but we both said it had to be the wind or something. A few years back, I had a habit of going out into the night on a scooter to enjoy the cool weather. One night, I was passing a house that had a small opening in between the house and a brick wall. Even though it was dark, I could see what appeared to be a hooded figure standing behind the wall staring at me. I stopped my scooter to get a better look, but I couldn't see any of its face. I was especially weirded out because I knew for a fact that no one lived in that house. Lots of houses in my neighborhood were empty, so there were plenty of instances in which people could get caught squatting. This guy was especially weird though, because he didn't hide upon me noticing him. He just looked at me. I was really creeped out because I could really feel him staring me down. I decided to head back to my house, and for some reason, I wanted to bring my younger brother and show him what I saw. He also owned a scooter, so it only took a few minutes to get to the house. Sure enough, the figure was still there, so I pointed it out to my brother. He couldn't see anything, so I stupidly used my phone's flashlight to illuminate the figure. After a few seconds, I was able to perfectly shine the light on his face, and what I saw is something I don't think I'll ever forget. The light revealed that the hooded figure had these massive yellow eyes that perfectly reflected the light, causing them to glow. They were so large that I couldn't see any other parts of its face. As soon as I processed what I was looking at, I screamed at my brother, tell him to get home as fast as possible. I was so desperate to get home that I grabbed him and my scooter and ran instead of wasting time getting on my scooter. As we were running home, I heard my brother scream, and upon turning around, I could see the figure was now in the middle of the house's lawn, standing like a statue. We got home just fine, but we were terrified at what we saw, especially me. It wouldn't have scared me as bad as it did if it weren't for those eyes. It was the most horrific stare I've ever seen in my entire life, and it's an experience I'll remember for a long time. Back in October of 2012, I started staying in my parents' house in what used to be my grandfather's room. It's sort of like an apartment. It's got its own kitchen, bathroom, everything. He passed away in 2005, and I moved into the room in 2009. Ever since I moved back here, every once in a while, I'll feel a presence in the room. Someone sitting at the edge of my bed, or holding my hand, or I'll feel like there's someone's hand on my shoulder. This has never felt threatening, and I never feel in danger because I believe it's my grandpa. In October of 2012, I was doing my junior practicium student teaching. This is a sort of program where you go once a week to a school and observe before real student teaching starts. It was a Tuesday night, and I only remember this because I went to school on Wednesdays. It was a considerable distance from my house, so I tried to get to bed early. This was one night I had trouble getting to sleep, which I never have. I can usually pass out anywhere at any time. I began to feel an anxiety come over me, in a state of panic. Another thing that never happens to me. And in my mind's eye, I kept envisioning a tall, black, humanoid figure with a long red tongue standing in the corner of my room. And at the time, it felt very vivid. But now I can't recall any details about this figure, except that tongue. I began to feel like if I stayed in my room any longer, I would be in serious danger. So I went into the next room, our family room, and decided to watch TV. I looked above the TV at the cable box and noticed it was 2:59 a.m. The second that digital clock hit 3 a.m., there were sounds of crickets coming from inside the room. And once that box hit 3:01, everything stopped. Now, I'm not a religious person, but my supervising teacher at school is. He had told me that crickets are related to locusts, referring to the biblical plague. And he told me to recite the prayer of Saint Michael. He couldn't remember it. He had told me he said that prayer every day and just couldn't seem to remember it that day for some strange reason. Getting home that day and accompanying days, it seemed as though there was a fog around my room, and the room felt different, just off. I would come home and lay on my bed for an afternoon nap, and the bed started to shake. It got to the point where my mother began to ask me if anything felt weird. She's had her own experiences, but that's a different story for a different day. Now, I live in New Jersey, and in October of 2012 we were hit by Hurricane Sandy, and we were without power for about a week or so. And I was not sleeping in that room in the darkness. I moved my mattress upstairs to our living room every night that week. A bluish-gray fog came up from downstairs and circled the room and I began to have dreams. Dreams of religious icons and the Virgin Mary falling into pits of fire. I had soon realized after that I had forgot my grandfather's birthday. Usually I'd light a candle for him at church or something for him. I thought maybe he was angry with me or something. So I went to church and lit a candle. It didn't change anything. A night soon after, however, I had a dream I was driving with Grandpa down a road. It was a pitch black paved road, and there was a bright white on either side, like a desert. My grandpa had a really thick Irish brogue, and sometimes it was hard to understand him, but he said something along the lines of always being there. The next morning I told my mom while my youngest brother was in the room, and he interrupted me and began filling in details of my dream for me. I asked him how he knew all this, and he said I was in the back seat. The following night I had another dream. One of those hypnic jerk dreams where you startle yourself awake, only I couldn't wake up. I was in a dead cornfield with naked, androgynous gray children who were dancing around with each other, and from behind those children came up from the ground a giant black monster. It looked like a dragon. I could see the folds clear as day as it looked at me. From behind came a winged humanoid being, I guess an angel. It had a sword. It stabbed the creature and it knelt down in front of me, and I woke up. At the foot of my bed was a white, translucent figure. It hovered there for about 10 seconds before disappearing. As I looked at it, I felt peace I had never had before, and I don't think I'll ever feel that again. The dreams and everything stopped after that. I never told my youngest brother about the black figure, or the dragon, or the children. But fast forward a year later, and I come home from work, and my brother is sitting at the kitchen table, looking shaken. He tells me he had a dream of naked children dancing around a dead cornfield and a black dragon behind him. Except no angel came. But he told me when he got ready for school and left, looking out the window of his room was a large black figure with a long red tongue. That was the last I ever heard of it. I'm still not particularly religious, but I can tell you ever since that event, I sleep with the lights on and have had routine sleep paralysis. If you made it to the end, I just want to say thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I have many more planned. And if you like what we do here, please subscribe to our channel. Leave us a like and comment below. Until next time, have yourself a wonderful day.